in the interest of time. So thank you everyone for your patience. Welcome. We're delighted to have a research update tonight with Golkoo, Morcos from BIOS and with Dr. Carlos Martinez and Daniel Rangel from Palmtree coming up next. So
thank you.
take it away, Golkoo.
Sure.
Spots with you here.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I don't know. I really appreciate you being here to listen to, 5-10 minutes of my presentation when I know so much is going on right now in our country. I was looking at some properties in Tuscany recently, so I know. Just I know. Well, you know what? They're paying people now to go out there and renovate these old, castles and things. Like that really doesn't sound like such a bad idea. And like take my girls with me and go farming and create like a vineyard. I don't know. Anyway, so I just want to take a few minutes of your time. I'm not going to have a very long presentation. You all are probably familiar with who I am. I've done several of these, so thank you for having me back. We're at BIOS Clinical Research. We're up on North Palm Canyon Drive, right across from the center. We've been around for a couple of years now. We wanted to bring HIV and PrEP research to town, along with our partners, Palmtree, and it's great to be able to present with them. I wanted to just give you a quick overview of some of the clinical trials that we are doing right now in recruiting. So I can move these slides? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So just in general, there are a lot of exciting things happening in HIV clinical trials right now. Most of the studies are now moving towards long-acting, whether that's injectable therapy or long-acting oral therapy. We also have cure modalities that are also part of long-term treatment, sorry, I can't talk today, guys. I had a long day. Long-acting injectable therapy that's also a part of cure. And those are the antibodies and long-acting injections. So this is just giving you an overview. A lot of new medicines coming to market, a lot of new mechanisms of action in terms of how these drugs work, a lot of novel things. And so I'm excited to say that we have studies in almost every single department that you see back here. We have new drugs, new mechanisms of action. We have long-acting therapies, both oral and injectable. We have broadly neutralizing antibodies as well. We don't have any vaccines or anything like that quite yet, but hopefully in the future as we try to get that kind of business going. So again, what we've got once weekly oral studies for HIV treatment. So this is instead of taking one pill once a day, you take a pill once a week. We've got injectable and infusion therapy. We're actually closed for enrollment on that. Long-acting injectables for PrEP. We have one coming up at the end of the year. It's going to be cabotegravir every 4 months injection. We are just finishing up a study called Purpose 2, which is lenacapavir for PrEP, and that was once every 6 months. So this is their rival company, ViiV, has come up with a longer formulation of an already marketed product that they have that's given every 2 months. Okay, so just to show you in perspective, to give you some perspective, we've got 10 studies for people who are living with HIV. These are studies for folks who are already on therapy and to switch them off of their current therapies to something else. And we've got 2 studies for PrEP, so HIV prevention. I'm only going to focus on 3 of the studies. The first 2 that you see, 5925 and 26, 6509, and 219230. These are the protocol numbers. So when you see me referring to the numbers, it's just the protocol numbers. I'm literally going to give you guys a very high level overview. We have 3 studies in total that are taking patients off of their current regimens and putting them on a once a week oral therapy. This study, 6509, is called Wonders 1. It opened enrollment and closed enrollment, I want to say, within like 2 weeks. It is phase 2, but I have good news. It's moving into phase 3, and we're going to get phase 3 when it's ready. So probably in the next 6 to 10 months, we'll be ready to enroll patients for the phase 3 of this trial. This is a combination of lenacapavir prodrug. So lenacapavir is a medication that's already on the market. They've now created a prodrug of it, and they've combined it with a um, prodrug of a long-acting integrase inhibitor.
Want to tell people what a prodrug is?
Yeah, so prodrugs are drugs that they add an extra moiety to, that when you see it, it's not the actual active drug. It's got to be broken down into its active formulation. And in that process, the body and enzymes will break down this drug into its active, what we call the active moiety. And when that happens, it can cause the drug to be long acting, meaning it's in your system and it can take a really long time to get those, active drugs to be released. Or it can be the purpose of a prodrug could be to bypass absorption issues. So maybe there's a formulation of it, this moiety that's added on can help with absorption and exposure over time to the medication. So that's the purpose of it. So it is a long-acting injectable integrase inhibitor, 1720, and a prodrug of lenacapavir, which is a capsid inhibitor. It's already on the market, but together it's once a week, which is really nice. This phase 2 study was taking folks off of Biktarvy, but the phase 3 is going to be very similar. It's going to be a switch off of Biktarvy. I don't know if they're going to have another protocol in which patients might be able to switch off of other standard of care therapies. But the purpose of the phase 2 is really to finalize dosing and to ensure more data on safety and efficacy of the product. In this instance, there are loading doses of both medications. And I don't think very many people have an issue with this because they'll take a couple of pills on the first day or the second day, and after that, it's just the one pill once a week. So it's pretty easy after. I'm not going to go through all the criteria because we're not currently enrolling for this study, but I just wanted to give you an idea because enrollment closed and we'll have phase 3 coming up. So 2 studies that I do want to focus on are 5925 and 5926. This is another study in which patients are switching off of their current regimens over to a once a week regimen. One of the protocols is specifically patients on Biktarvy switching over, and the other protocol are patients who are in standard of care switching over. And when I talk about standard of care, the way that the sponsor has defined that is by looking at the guidelines and looking at what standard of care regimens are for patients who are initiating therapy for the first time. Now, that doesn't mean that people in the study are initiating therapy for the first time. In fact, they're already on therapy. They just have to be on one of those therapies that are designated as initial recommendations for patients who are starting treatment. So if you ever have looked, you probably haven't, but if you ever look at the guidelines, you've got initial recommendations for treatment, and then you have other recommendations for treatment in experienced patients and in other situations. So they're looking specifically at initial treatment recommendations. So one is a switch from Biktarvy, the other is standard of care. What they consider to be standard of care, this is a lot of text on here, so just listen to me and don't look at it. But I'm looking at it because I need to read it. It's any integrase inhibitor based therapy. So if you're on Icentris, if you're on Biktarvy, if you're on Tivicay, if you're on Triumec, plus 1 or 2 nucleosides. So again, examples I'm looking at, Biktarvy, Triumec, Tivicay plus Descovy or Truvada. It could be Dovato. It could be Icentris plus Truvada or Descovy, and it could be Genvoya or Stribilt. It could also be a boosted protease inhibitor in combination with 2 nucleosides. So boosted PI such as darunavir, so Prozista-based regimen. So Prozista plus Descovy plus or Truvada, or the single tablet regimen. So there are a lot of other combinations here. I think the challenge with our community is going to be many of you are on complicated regimens. You unfortunately wouldn't be a candidate for this trial. They're also excluding folks who have a prior history of virologic failure. So if you've been on older regimens and you had you had your viral load go up and your doctor had to change your regimen because of drug resistance and that kind of thing, unfortunately, for this particular protocol, you wouldn't be eligible. However, if we have a ton of patients who they've been on therapies for 20 years, and even though they've switched from one to another, they have never experienced what we call virologic failure. They might have had drug holidays. They might have not taken their medications completely, but they've never really truly failed a regimen. And they don't have, that history that we would see with all the resistance. Granted, in this protocol, they're not actually looking for resistance mutations. We have to determine whether or not we feel by looking at their resistance profile, whether a patient had a history of failure or not. Patients can certainly get transmitted drug resistance, which means, if once they were infected with HIV, they received already existing mutations in their virus that were resistant to certain medications. And if that's the case and the patient has never experienced virologic failure, that would be completely fine. But anyway, so I don't want to get down into the weeds, but just to give you a perspective again, standard of care or Biktarvy, switching over to this once a week regimen. And then I won't talk about artistry except to say that I've talked about it for a very long time. It's finally closed to enrollment. We got 20 patients in this trial. We're very, very happy with that. We apologize to any patients who we weren't able to get into the study. There are folks who wanted to get in and at the very end, it was difficult to, the sponsor made it very difficult for us to get additional spots. The other thing is these protocols, as you know, have really strict criteria. And, if you have a viral load that's, 50 copies or 51 copies, it's like you have to have less than 50 copies for an entire year. It could be so frustrating because you could have less than 20 copies for like 11 months of the year. And then all of a sudden you went to LabCorp and they gave you some weird result, or it came back, 50 or 51 copies. And it's so frustrating because you were waiting to be in the study all year. And so we sincerely apologize to anyone who that might have happened to. I can understand. But the good news is we're going to get other protocols. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get other protocols for patients who are treatment experienced and might be similarly on complex regimens. So hopefully we'll have something for you in the future soon. Okay, cabotegravir for PrEP. I'm really excited about this trial. It's a phase 2b. I don't believe they're doing a phase 3 for this. This is actually going to be their registrational trial. They're mostly going to be looking at pharmacokinetics, which is looking at drug levels, because, they already have the monthly and every 2 months version approved. It's really just to see how this formulation does from a tolerability and efficacy perspective. But I suppose from the FDA's perspective, they don't need a much larger phase 3 to do that because of the already existing evidence that they have. Personally, what I like about cabotegravir is that it's pretty well tolerated. It's a deep intramuscular injection given in the gluteus medius muscle. As you know, we were also doing lenacapavir for PrEP. That's two subcutaneous injections that are given. It's also great, but with it comes, I feel, a little bit more side effects in terms of pain and nodules and that kind of thing. I don't know how this formulation is going to be, so I'm very curious. And but we already know how people love being on it, so hopefully we'll get folks for that. And then, of course, we've had this ongoing observational study. For those of you who are on complex regimens, if you've had your regimen changed in the last few years and you don't want to take the risk of going on a new medicine, but you don't mind your information being looked at in terms of how your clinic or your physician's managing you and your HIV therapy, and just for us to go through medical records and submit those, and would be willing to give us that information, please let us know, because we're still looking for participants for that cohort. It's Thera. Yeah, this one is a Thera. Okay. And this is our information. So I think our information is also on the HARP website and all that. And I don't have a booth today, but I just trust that everybody will know where to find me if you need anything. That's it. Yeah, sure.
Any questions for Golkoo? Okay.
I'm gonna go. My girls are waiting for me, so I've got a long drive home to Orange County. Thank you again. So hopefully see you. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. We'll see you next time. Slideshow and play from start. And Daniel or Carlos, who's taking it away? Who's the man in charge? Okay. So you're up. You're good to go. Just ignore the little black box.
Oh, it's not on this one, so it should be
Yeah,
fine.
yeah, you're fine. That's what we
Yeah, because it's not even on the computer to even know how to move.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, thank you for coming. My name is Daniel Rangel. I'm the president of Palmtree Clinical Research. So we are Palmtree Clinical Research. Does it have sound? Does not have sound. No, I meant the PowerPoint. It's not linked to sound.
It may not be.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So we are Palmtree Clinical Research. We've been around since 2010. Originally, Palmtree was founded by Mr. Boshin, who's still around with us, and has decided to do some good in the community. So we are the first multi-specialty research dedicated facility, and the goal is to bring new medications, devices, diagnostic tools, and medical treatments to our Coachella Valley and surrounding areas. Since 2010, we've done over 175 research projects. This is I guess, a list of all our research experience, including with Mr. Boshin, who founded the company, and everybody that has joined Palmtree. So we've done a little bit of everything. So now I'm going to go over our principal investigators. We do have multiple investigators and departments. So one of our main providers or principal investigators is Dr. Ritchie. I think some of you know Dr. Ritchie. We were at Pride this weekend helping her with her booth. So she is a PI for infectious diseases protocols, and she's the founder of PS Test. We also work with Dr. Yunus. He's a PI for infectious diseases and wound care protocols. He's also sub-I for some of our infectious diseases, and he's the founder of Yunus Medical Center in Palm Desert. And we have a study right now that we're working with him. It is an infusion study, and I'll go over that in a little bit. We've also worked with Dr. Maduli, who started at Eisenhower, and now he's at Desert Regional, but I think he also does some work at Eisenhower still, and he's been a PI and a sub-I for infectious disease protocols. We also do some gastroenterology, so we work with Dr. Abdallah Zadeh, or Dr. Zadeh for short, and he is the GI, the PI for the GI studies. And he also has his own office, and I think he opened a second one, or it's scheduled to open soon. And I think that's in La Quinta as well. We currently just started working with Dr. Gargary. He's a pulmonary specialist. We used to work with Dr. Tanous, but he kind of got really busy with other items. And so he pretty much stepped down from research. I think we worked with him for about 10 years, Dr. Martinez about. So he did refer Dr. Gargary. Dr. Gargary works up in Yucca Valley, and also where we're located at the Las Palmas Medical Plaza. So we're working with him, and he's our new PI for pulmonary studies. And then we also work with Dr. Munyon. He's our investigator for dermatology, and he also works at Pacific Dermatology Institute. And we're hoping to continue to expand. We're looking forward to working with Dr. Koldonic in internal medicine. He's also at PS Test. And we're hoping to get some research started with Dr. Aronow in neurological research protocols. As far as site staff, there's myself. I tend to manage dermatology because I did work for Contour Dermatology for about 4 years. So my experience allowed us to start up some dermatology research studies. And then we have Dr. Martinez, which I think you all know by now. He's our chief medical officer, and he's been pretty much the sub-I on the majority of our clinical trials. And he also served as a PI in a study we work with UCSD. We have Ms. Cortez. She runs our pulmonary department. She also has some preclinical trial experience. We also have Ms. Bustos, Alondra Bustos, who runs our GI department, and she's also a CPT or phlebotomist. We also have Ms. Kirsten Ibarra, also CPT. She helps us with site support personnel, drawing labs, processing labs, and reaching out to potential patients. This is a list of groups we work with in the desert and outlying areas. So we do work with Eisenhower Imaging Center for liver biopsies, Halo Diagnostics for imaging, RadNet for imaging. Meniscus Eye Institute, Mirador Surgical Center, DAP Health, ANAC, RPS, Dr. Eunice's Fusion Wound Care Center. Milligan Dermatology helps us with our liver biopsies. They do prep the slides for us. We work with Cure Cardiovascular Consultants with Dr. Bagari at the same location we're at, and PS Tests and Dr. Zaday's clinic, and also Cheeky Charity, which you might have seen at Pride. They're the ones with the poster with showing your butts to the world. And they had the big colon walkthrough pop-up. So as far as enrolling clinical trials, we presented this one before. We are working on a study with AbbVie. It is an infusion study medication. Pretty much for the first 2 months, every other week, you get an infusion, and hopefully that's enough to cover you for the rest of the year. And the goal with this study is that it can kickstart your own immune system and to help keep your HIV under control. There are 5 treatment arms, which include a combination of study medications, a single study medication with placebo, and then there is a placebo arm. They recently updated the protocol to include an open label extension where instead of infusion, they would do a subcutaneous injection. I have a video, but I don't think there's any sound. We do have this on our Facebook, so you can always listen to it. And we presented it at the last, Dr. Martinez presented it.
In this setting to see if
there we
one
go.
or both are safe and effective in controlling HIV without ART. Once in the study, you'll need to stop taking your ART at the direction of the study doctor to begin the investigational medication. You'll have regular blood tests, so the study team can monitor your viral load and CD4 levels. And if your viral load increases or you stop feeling well, the study doctor will have you restart your ART and continue in the study. To be eligible to participate, you must be 18 to 70 years old, diagnosed with HIV-1, on ART for at least 12 months, and on your current ART for at least 8 weeks. You'll also need to agree to stop your ART at the direction of the study doctor. If you're interested, the study doctor will review other requirements as well as potential risks with you. You may also leave the study at any time for any reason. While participating, all study-related treatment and medications are at no cost. Your participation may help improve medical knowledge about HIV treatment and patient care worldwide. Thank you for learning about the M19-965 study.
And for that study, Dr. Ritchie is our principal investigator, and sub-investigator is Dr. Eunice. The infusion center with Dr. Eunice, that's where the infusions will be done. Otherwise, all the visits are done at our office in Las Palmas.
You want to explain what the BNABs are?
That would be something for Dr. Martinez to help me with. Okay.
Yeah, just so people know what the study drug is. It's not just an infusion. What it is? Broadly neutralizing antibodies, and these are antibodies that people who living with HIV have produced against HIV in their body. So they find ones that are really active and really strong. Unfortunately, most of us don't have those, but some people do. They're able to control the virus. So they found people who have those, and then they put them together. So they're combinations of antibodies. So it's basically using, like he said, kind of jumpstarting your immune system by infusing other people's antibodies into you. So it's an immunological control of the virus. So instead of taking drugs, you're getting an immune-based therapy from others. That is one thing. Yeah, Andrew.
You say that there's an arm for placebo. So what happens with people who don't do well after not having a medication?
Yeah, we would stop the study and they would go back on their treatment. Yeah, it's something that we are very concerned about, brought it up with the sponsor, but that's pretty much what the protocol is. So unfortunately, they kept it into the protocol. Yeah.
And that was an FDA requirement, right?
I'm not sure if it was the FDA requirement, but the sponsor, it was. Okay. Yeah.
They needed to have that arm to be able to prove practically that the concept was working.
Okay, because I thought in general, these kind of studies were not doing placebos.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're correct. We do have a very strict
guideline to actually know when to restart antiretrovirals. But at this moment, yeah, there is the placebo arm. We just follow you very closely. I believe we do blood work almost every single week to make sure that your viral load doesn't spike. But we do actually follow you very, very closely when you're off your treatments and during that whole period, regardless of which arm you're on.
And then the minute you become detectable, they put you back on therapy.
Not really. That's where the little table falls into place. After a certain point, that's when we put you back on antiretrovirals. One of the things to keep in mind, though, is that the protocol also specifies that it depends on the principal investigator. So if Dr. Ritchie deems that, you know what, you're a 1,000 viral load, let's put you back on your antiretrovirals, that's when we'll put you back on antiretrovirals. We don't need to follow the protocol closely. As long as if the PI thinks that you need to go back, then we'll put you back. But we do follow you very closely.
Yeah, and you're right about the placebos in most, drug therapy trials, that they know the drugs work, so they don't need a placebo arm. This is a brand new kind of therapy, so the FDA requires that, so they know that it's, actually working and it's not just by chance.
Yeah, and keep in mind that this study is not an actual treatment study. It's actually to get your immune system to kind of kick in layman's terms, to get to start up or to turn it on to fight to keep your viral load under control. But it's not a treatment study.
Is the prevalence with people living with HIV high for vitiligo?
Oh, no, these are just other studies we're conducting. Yeah, not necessarily for. Yeah. No, no.
It's the same population.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you, Jeff. So another study we are conducting for our dermatology department is we're looking for patients with non-segmental vitiligo. So pretty much vitiligo, if you can see from the is loss of pigmentation in the skin. We're looking for patients who have this on the face and the body. So pretty much that's what we are looking for. So if you know anybody that might be interested, you can send them our way. I'll just keep skipping here. For our pulmonary department, we do have 2 idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis studies. We have the TETON 301, that's the parent study. Patients who complete that study, so it's a 52-week study, can roll over to the open label. So we know what the patient is getting, whether it's. Sorry. Oh, it's okay. So the 301, they may be on placebo. It's they inhale the medication through a device that's provided by the study 4 times a day. After that, they can roll over to the open label, so we know what they're getting, and it's active medication. And that I believe is at least another year or so. The other IPF study is the Pliant or the Beacon IPF. This one is an oral medication, so it's very different from the teen study. It's about another year long, and a lot of patients have been reaching out to us for that one because they've been hearing about this medication. We've actually the patients we've seen have actually reached out to us. We didn't have to do any advertising. They actually are calling our site asking for this specific study. And then we have the Lighthouse study. That is a lung cancer screening study. It's pretty much a blood sample collection study. So if you're scheduled for a low dose CT scan or LD CT, we would need to see you before that scan, and we pretty much collect some data and do a blood sample. All these studies are at no cost to the patients, and we even compensate patients for their time. For the Lighthouse study, we see the patient every year for the years after, unless something has changed. But that's pretty much a blood sample collection study. They're looking for biomarkers in the blood for early detection of lung cancer. And I'll skip the video. For our GI department, we do a lot of NASH study or non-alcoholic steatohepatitis or fatty liver disease. So pretty much we've done probably close to 5 or 6 studies, and we also have 2 NASH study protocols coming up. We also are working on an ulcerative colitis study that should be starting soon, 2 NASH studies, and then we're looking forward to a colorectal cancer screening study like the lung cancer study.
So there's a lot of fatty liver disease in HIV. Did they allow people with HIV in the trials?
The current protocols unfortunately do not, because we keep pushing for that. I mean, we've had discussion. We were actually looking at, I think, a protocol maybe 2, 3 years ago, what they actually were combining the two, and we're very excited. But I think for the FDA, they ended up separating it. So they were not allowing HIV patients into NASH studies. So we're always pushing for that because a lot of our studies don't allow HIV patients into other studies. But like the Lighthouse study, some of these blood sample collection studies do allow it, but unfortunately, a lot do not allow HIV positive patients into it. We always push for that, but unfortunately, that's a criteria that's always exclusionary. And that's pretty much for it for our studies. We are working on more studies for dermatology. Hopefully, we get some eczema studies. There's a potential acne vaccine study. I don't think you guys would be interested in that one, but hopefully we do get some interest in those types of studies. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was great. So any questions for the panel? Kind of asked as we went along.
Yeah. Do you know if the FDA is actually planning on putting up some guidelines on regards to patients that are HIV positive being part of a lot of these clinical trials?
Not that I know of. We've been advocating that for years. It's especially a problem in cancer trials. And they actually started a whole different cancer group too. And they end up, wasting a lot of money doing parallel trials just because they won't do it. They've been advocating for it. We've been pushing it for years, but it just doesn't seem to happen. The reason they do it is the drug companies don't want people with complicated histories in there. They think, oh, well, they have HIV, they're going to get sick. It's going to make our drug look bad. So they kick them out of the trial. And the FDA doesn't have enough teeth to require them to do it. Everything is very political, and the FDA is seen as a regulatory agency that's bad and keeping drug companies from doing what they want to do. So there's a lot of political pressure in the against the FDA to be too harsh in terms of requiring companies to do things they don't want to do. So if you haven't voted yet, vote. Anything else?
Is there any thoughts regarding like going case by case to allow HIV patients into clinical trials? Like,
I know sometimes they will make, special requests, but it's entirely up to the discretion of the drug company of whether or not they allow it, like compassionate use or something like that. But like I said, in cancer, there's a very active, and we've had them come and speak in past years. There's something called the AIDS Malignancy Consortium. They did the anchor trial for HPV that we all heard about. So, they've done some really great work. But they continue to kind of do these recreating other people's trials so they can actually study them with people with HIV. So kind of how it works, unfortunately. So great. Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. And thanks to the folks online who stuck it out. And next month, we're not going to have Positive Life because we're having our World AIDS Day event. It's going to be on Sunday, December 1st. It'll be at the Palm Springs Art Museum. We're partnering with a group called Visual AIDS. You may have heard of them. They promote the works of people living with HIV. So this year it's going to be a series of short documentaries. So they'll have a screening at the Palm Springs Art Museum, and then they're going to have a panel discussion with some of the artists. And before that, we'll have our 3rd annual Timothy Ray Brown Community Cure Symposium. It'll feature our own City of Hope patient, Paul Edmonds, who was cured of HIV at City of Hope a few years back. And one of the more recently out people who announced his cure, the Dusseldorf patient, Mark Franka. We're bringing him in from Germany. And so the two of them will kind of talk about their stories. Researchers from the RIG laboratory that we work with, one of the NIH-funded cure research groups, will talk about the research they're doing. They're based in La Jolla and at USC, and also at Emory in Atlanta. And then we'll have one of the doctors from City of Hope who's doing a study, and has some flyers. It's a really complicated gene therapy study, trying to recreate kind of what they did in the people like Timothy and Paul and so forth. So you don't have to have cancer, but they take out your own blood cells, genetically modify them, put them back in, kind of the same way they did the sickle cell cure. So it's really fascinating stuff, very cutting edge. It's a very complicated study. we have to basically move into City of Hope and have a caretaker come and be there while you're going through the procedure. They're being really, really cautious, but it's really exciting. Could provide a cure that won't be very scalable, but at least a proof of concept in a few years. So exciting stuff.
Be sending us a link for that December 1st event?
Yes, we'll be sending that out. We're working with the museum and they've been a little slow and getting everything pulled together. But we hope that by the end of this week, we'll have that out and we'll send it out. So check your email. But yeah, mark your calendars, December 1st. It'll be 11 to 3 o'clock. So it'll be our program first and then they'll show the documentaries afterwards at the Palm Springs Art Museum. So
It's free.
and it's free, of course. Everything we do is free. And there's food. And we're going to try to record it and hopefully do better than we did tonight on that part.
Thank you, Jeff.
Great, thanks, everybody. Oh, one more thing. In the month of December, we are doing a showing of the works of visual artists living with HIV. We're collaborating with DAP and then community artists with Stephen Bombach Gallery. So you know them, they're in the art district behind the consignment shops. So the opening will be that on the Monday, December 2nd, and it'll go all month. And Paul Edmonds, if you didn't know, is actually a very accomplished artist, and he's going to be at the show as well. So check that out. That information will be coming in your email as well.
Tupperware thing is next week.
Yeah, Tupperware. What night is the Tupperware party? Do you remember?
13th.
13th. Okay, you guys know better than we do. Yeah, so the big gay Tupperware party, we're doing it again. So do your Christmas shopping early. I know you heard about Tupperware going into bankruptcy. They're not going out of business. They're just kind of restructuring. I can't imagine they'd ever go away entirely. So, but yeah, get your Tupperware while you can. Make your mom proud. Thanks, everybody. Try to stay sane during this.